Would you believe me if I told you I picked this topic because I found it on a listicle, and not because I'm a basic biddy who enjoys the occasional musical? Because honestly, I'd have a hard time believing myself. No, this did come from a Mental Floss list of 15 tales of women ghosts, but honestly, I would be bopping along if Lin-Manuel Miranda added lyrics to this story. Overall, the theme of the musical Hamilton is legacy. Some look for legacy through their bloodline, others through their accomplishments. But the point is, in the end, we have no control over our legacy, and it is those who go on to tell others about us who control the narrative. So today, we're going to talk about Theodosia Burr's legacy and how her narrative has been shrouded in mystery. Did her life really end in a common shipwreck, or is there a chance her story went on? Welcome to Ladies Fright. I'm your host, Joan. Trigger warnings. Mention of difficult birth and child death. Theodosia Burr was born June 21st, 1783, to Theodosia Bartow Provost and Aaron Burr. Her mother was originally married to a British officer when she was 17, but once the Revolutionary War started and her husband was away, she used her home as a resting place for the Revolutionary forces. And George Washington even used it at one point as a headquarters. During the summer of 1778, Aaron Burr was coming back from the Battle of Monmouth, which had ended in a tactical draw, but many considered a victory for the scrappy Continental Army. Washington had made arrangements for them to stay at the Hermitage, Provost's home. Within that stay, a romance blossomed, and they began a very open affair, with Burr often visiting the Hermitage. When she learned of her husband's death due to yellow fever, Theodosia and Burr were married by the next year in 1782. During the affair, they would often write letters to each other, which covered a slew of topics like politics, philosophy, and feminism. They especially bonded over the feminist writer Mary Wollstonecraft's book, The Vindication of the Rights of Woman. Burr admired Provost's sense of independence and intelligence, and it was something he strived to have his daughter inherit. Burr made it a point to raise Theodosia, his daughter, with the same education he would have given a son. Thus, she was educated in Latin, French, Roman history, philosophy, reading, writing, and arithmetic. Her intelligence and sophistication were widely recognized, and some believe that she was the best educated woman in America during the 1790s. She even started to dip into American politics by becoming the hostess of the Burr home after her mother's death in 1794. And would entertain the likes of Alexander Hamilton and James Madison. On February 2nd, 1801, Theodosia Burr married the wealthiest man in South Carolina and governor of the state, Joseph Alston. There was a debate if their marriage was political or for love. However, based on the letters the couple sent to each other, even if their marriage did help the Burr family's declining fortune, there was certainly love between them. On a fun note, they were the first celebrity couple to honeymoon at Niagara Falls. In the same year of his daughter's marriage in 1801, Aaron Burr became Vice President of the United States after a very close race with Thomas Jefferson. This contentious race did give Burr the office in title, but Jefferson shut him out of any decision-making when it came to party matters. To make matters worse, his ongoing feud with Alexander Hamilton was reaching a peak. On July 11th, 1804, Hamilton and Burr went out to Weehawken, New Jersey. There, one of the most infamous duels in American history took place. Whether Hamilton never intended to aim for Burr is still debated, though most believe he intentionally aimed towards the sky that day. Burr did not, and his bullet struck Hamilton in the upper hip and pierced his liver and spine. Hamilton was taken away to New York, where he died the next day. Although Burr was never tried, he was charged with murder in both New Jersey and New York. Eventually, all charges were dropped, with the indictment in New Jersey being thrown out since Hamilton was shot in New Jersey but died in New York. He fled to South Carolina, where Theodosia was with her husband, but eventually returned to Washington, D.C. to complete his term as vice president. Because, yeah, he was still holding office while all this was happening. You would think Burr may try to keep a low profile after getting away with shooting one of the founding fathers, but no. Using the newly granted territory of the Louisiana Purchase, Burr planned to cause an insurrection. He stood trial in 1807 on the charges of treason for the plot of taking New Orleans and Western territories by force. Jefferson in particular wanted to see Burr found guilty. However, Burr was acquitted of all charges based on insufficient evidence. Burr decided to flee to Europe, leaving his creditors and daughter in the States. While her father's life was taking one negative nosedive after another, Theodosia's life was progressing in a very different manner. She gave birth to her son, Aaron Burr Alston. I'm sorry. I know these shared names are confusing, but the family called him Gamby, which I will also refer to him as. The birth was not an easy one. Theodosia suffered from a prolapsed uterus, which led to her possibly having uterine cancer. Whatever the diagnosis, Theodosia was constantly in poor health. She was used to the busy social life of New York City, but the plantation life was more solitude by nature. The humidity and the mosquitoes, as well as her just constantly feeling ill, kept Theodosia isolated, bored, and lonely. The loneliness turned into grief when Gamby passed away at the age of 10 from contracting malaria. With the start of the War of 1812, which, if you're not sure what that is, the only way I can really dumb it down for time's sake is the Revolutionary War straight to DVD sequel, Aaron Burr was ordered out of England, and he made his way back to New York in June. Normally, Theodosia would have traveled north for her father's homecoming, but this time she was still too deep in grieving the death of Gamby to travel. She longed to see her father, but she needed time. She did eventually feel ready for the journey in December. She decided to go by ship since it would be the fastest way to get from South Carolina to New York. Though Theodosia was ready to travel, she picked a very dangerous time to do so for both political and environmental reasons. On the political side, the War of 1812 was underway and the British Navy was stopping American ships to search for contraband. The area near modern-day's Outer Banks was known for pirates. Less than 100 years prior, pirates like Blackbeard were using what we know today as the Outer Banks as a safe harbor. For the environment, the coast of North Carolina was nicknamed the Graveyard of the Atlantic. Storms, which were common in the winter months, would push ships towards the shore of the barrier islands and wreck them or become grounded on the sandbars. Wreckers were people who would scavenge the Carolina coast looking for an opportunity to wreck or ground a ship. On stormy nights, they would walk a donkey with a lantern the length of the shore to the ship on the water. This would look like another vessel who was able to safely dock. This would lure the captains to the shore. Once the ships were destroyed, the wreckers would pillage the cargo. Some were even known to murder the crew and passengers. Joseph Alston wanted to join his wife on this journey. However, he was the newly elected governor, which also made him the brigadier of the state militia. War had just been declared a few months prior, and there was no way he could leave his command at that time. Both Burr and Alston were worried about Theodosia's safe passage. To try to safeguard her in some way, Alston wrote a letter for his wife to carry on her person, explaining how she was grieving and ill and just wanted to see her father. Alston hoped if a British naval officer was to intercept the ship, he would see the note and he'd take pity on Theodosia. He also chose the vessel that she'd be traveling on, a schooner named Patriot, based on its reputation and speed. Burr asked his business associate, Dr. Timothy Green, to accompany her. With all the preparations they could make, Theodosia set out on her journey home. She left from the port of Georgetown on December 31st, 1812. The time came and went when the Patriot was expected in New York. Even though no reports of the fate of the Patriot had been made, both Burr and Alston began to mourn Theodosia's death. They assumed she died at sea, the ship destroyed by a winter storm, which was documented to have happened in January of 1813. This explanation, however, was not good enough for the public, and other theories made through conjecture and gossip began to take form. One belief was that the British sank the ship. However, this one we can clearly get rid of as an option. Ship's logs from several vessels who were patrolling the route in 1813 did not have any records of the Patriot being stopped by the British Navy. Many believe that Theodosia was a victim of pirates. Newspapers even speculated her fate, either being imprisoned or murdered or being married off to pirates. One New Orleans paper in 1875 claimed that she was killed because she refused to comply with the pirates' wishes. Another report said she was actually in Bermuda and was made a mistress to her captor. Multiple people have confessed to being her murderer. In 1820, 2 men who were to be executed said they had robbed the ship and killed all aboard. Again in 1833, a man claimed he made Theodosia walk the plank. With all these confessions through literal decades, it never became clear how Theodosia's legacy ended. That is, if it even did. Since ghost stories are based on your history and the impressions you leave behind, I would argue there's some kind of legacy. Fight me in the comments. Let's talk about Theodosia's legacy post-mortem. Theodosia's ghost is said to appear in several different places. In South Carolina, she is said to be present in both her home of the former Oaks Plantation and the Alston summer home in Debardeau Beach. At Oaks Plantation, now Brook Green Gardens, her spirit is said to be seen around the rice fields. In Debardeau Beach, she is seen wearing all gray. She's even seen in the port she departed from in Greentown. There are also reports of her appearing near the old brick warehouse near the dock. Some believe her soul remains in South Carolina because she's searching for Gamby, and South Carolina was where she last saw him. Others believe it's because she has no gravestone marking her death. Her spirit is just bound to keep roaming, trying to find her final resting place. In a less sad, but definitely more violent version of her ghost, she is said to appear at Bald Head Island in North Carolina. Witnesses claim they saw a young woman along the beach in a very nice dress, which seemed to be out of place for the time period and location. There are some reports that she is reliving the last moments of her life, as she's been seen being chased by 3 other spirits. Even still, others believe she is nowhere in the South and her spirit has come home to New York. In Greenwich Village, there is a carriage house turned restaurant called One If by Land, Two If by Sea. For those of you who forgot your U.S. history course or never took one because you're not from the USA, One If by Land, Two If by Sea was the code for Paul Revere, who was a Minuteman who was tasked with letting the local militia know when and where the British were coming. 1 lantern would be put into the window if the British were coming to Boston, Massachusetts by land, and 2 if they were coming by sea. Now I hear you saying, "Hey, wait, Joan, did you just say Boston? I thought the restaurant was in New York." You are correct. I did say both those things. According to NewYorkGhost.com, the name comes from belief that Paul Revere hitched his horse to the carriage house at some point, which is still an odd connection to hang your name on when it used to be owned by Aaron Burr. You could have named it Burgers and Fries. Very classy, I know. In the 1790s, Burr kept his horses and coach at this carriage house, which his horses were boarded here until his little incident in New Jersey, which led to his retreat to the South in 1804, which we have previously covered. Unsurprisingly, Aaron Burr's ghost is said to haunt here. Burr seems to no longer be willing to wait for it, since his spirit is said to send dishes flying. He also seems to have forgotten how to be a gracious host in the afterlife, since he pulls out chairs from under patrons. Paranormal investigators have captured an EVP, or electronic voice phenomenon, of a man's voice saying, "My house." They believe this is Aaron Burr, but he didn't live here, his horses did. So it would make more sense to me if it was someone who worked at the stables, or maybe Ed the talking horse. Theodosia is said to be here too. She is described as a bit more timid than her father's spirit. She is said to be seen all around the restaurant, and once again, her ghost is described as lost. Personally, I hope it's not the idea that she is searching for her father and the two of them just can't find each other. To think that her spirit is destined to be searching for either her father or her son for the rest of eternity makes me really upset. I'm sure there is something to be said about how the most educated woman of her time is now destined to be searching for a man, but considering how devastated she was from both her separation from her father and the loss of her son, the narrative makes sense. What does not make sense is that her ghost at the restaurant is said to take off women's earrings who are sitting at the bar. It is not described as malicious, but it feels out of character. Without evidence, this feels like one of those things where people try to explain common occurrences. In our house, I will tell my husband, a ghost or fairy must have taken it, when I can't find something. Do I think a ghost actually took it? I mean, maybe some of the times, but I would say 8 out of 10 of the times I know it's my dumb ass that misplaced the thing. But it's fun to blame the paranormal. I think it's safe to say what happened to Theodosia is a mystery. We don't know if she died or even if it happened at sea. We don't know for sure what's going on with her in the afterlife. Is she haunting the South? Is she haunting the North? Can it be both? Do ghosts have multiple addresses? Where do they pay taxes? I'm as lost as Theodosia's wandering ghost appears to be. But what if I tell you there is one more layer to this mystery? We need to talk about the portrait. Dr. William Poole was making his way to a house call in Nag's Head, North Carolina. A fisherman had made a call for the doctor to aid his sick, elderly wife. She had been sick for some time now, and Poole didn't think he could do much to help ease her suffering. 1869 may be the last year this woman would see. Once in the home, it was very clear this family did not have much. The wife explained instead of payment, she could only offer the doctor an oil painting. When Poole saw the painting, he recognized the subject as no other than Theodosia Burr. With no artist signature on the painting, the only way to confirm the identity of the subject was to ask those who would possibly own other portraits of her. Later, family members confirmed it was Theodosia in the painting. Now, there are 2 different versions of the explanation of how this portrait ended up in a cottage in Nag's Head. One says the fisherman may have been more nefarious in his youth, where he had been part of the party which plundered the Patriot. Theodosia had commissioned the painting of herself to bring as a gift to her father to hang in his home. Theodosia believed on several occasions she was close to death due to her illness. She may have believed this visit would be her last to see her father and wanted him to have a memento of herself. The more sensational tale is the fisherman found both the painting and the woman washed ashore in a rowboat. The woman gripped tightly to the portrait and would not let go. She had no memory of who she was or where she had come from. She just knew she needed to hang on to this portrait. Taking pity on her, the local community welcomed her and cared for her. Over time, the woman became an official member of the community and married the fisherman who had saved her. Even though her memories of her life previous to that day never came back, she still kept the portrait. Now, the woman was elderly and would soon die. Her husband had called for the doctor, and all he could do was ease her suffering. Even in her weak state, she snapped to attention when she heard her husband trying to barter her portrait to the doctor, and she said, "It's mine. You shall not have it. I am on my way to visit my father in New York, and I am taking this picture of his darling Theodosia." She grabbed the portrait and ran into the ocean, and even though she was never seen again, the portrait floated back to the shore the following day. So, even though that version of the story would be so fun if true, it's not real. You can see the portrait in question at the Lewis Walpole Library in Farmington, Connecticut. The good condition the painting is in suggests it did not spend an extended amount of time in seawater, since seawater can cause oil paints to crack. There is one more version of this story I have not mentioned, probably the most mundane one of them all. The woman in the painting is not Theodosia. Instead, it is an image of some random woman in her youth who sold the portrait at an estate sale. She just happened to look like Theodosia. I love a bit of a murder mystery party, getting together with your friends, wearing costumes, showing off your acting chops you haven't used since the middle school musicale. There's some drama and, of course, a mystery to solve. Going around and talking with people, trying to find the puzzle pieces to solve the mystery, and when you do find the answer, it is so satisfying. Though that is the thing. A satisfying mystery is one we can solve. Realistically, unless we find the remains of the Patriot, we will never know for sure what happened to Theodosia. Yet we still feel the urge to try to solve the mystery, to come up with the solutions no matter how out there they seem. Because at least it feels better than having no answer at all. Though it is interesting how outlandish some of these solutions are when Burr and Alston are most likely correct. The ship was destroyed in a storm, and that is how Theodosia saw her end. So why is it that the answer is not good enough for the rest of us? I have to wonder if people feel like a storm at sea is a cosmically unjust ending for someone who had so much promise. Her father had a political career, which can only be described as dramatic. Her mother defied her marriage for her own strong political beliefs. Theodosia was raised to have an education. Many thought her gender shouldn't be allowed. It seems unfair that a random storm took her out before she was really able to leave a mark on the world like her father did. So are these conjectures just us coping? Hoping she would go out with a bang than the reality of a grieving, sickly woman who just wanted to see her dad one more time. In all reality, if she had not died on that ship, she may have passed away soon after. It is suspected she was suffering from uterine cancer, which may have been the same disease which took her mother's life when she had passed when she was only 47. Theodosia's legacy would have been interesting. She was highly educated, but that did not save her from her father's reputation of killing Alexander Hamilton and the traitor of Thomas Jefferson's America. She unfortunately lost her blood legacy when her son passed away, and she was unable to have more children. After her disappearance, a new legacy had been made for her. One that has almost an immortal shelf life because it has been wrapped in a mystery and because we refuse to accept the most simple conclusion. We keep her story alive and never let her spirit rest. But what do I know? I'm just some lady talking about some frights. Thank you so much if you have made it to the end. This is the first episode going out, and it was a journey getting here. It's my first time being solo. I will say the research and writing was a lot of fun and very interesting, and I'm excited to keep doing it. If you have come this far, I am obligated to ask you to please like, comment, and subscribe. And if you enjoyed it, let me know. If you hated this, please share it with your worst enemy. Make them suffer through my voice like I do through editing. That is my gift to you. You are welcome. For everybody else, I would just like to do a couple of thank yous, especially because this is the first one. First, I want to give a huge thank you to Stevie from Truth or Demons podcast. She has been so helpful with just coming up with concepts for things, with making me feel confident in doing this and getting me all set up and just hooking me up with different people to talk to. And I really appreciate that. And thank you so much for your kindness. And then I'd also like to thank my friends Lanny and Margot. They are a big portion of this background inspiration and sending me Snapchats from TJ Maxx. So I really appreciate it. For everything else, if you want to continue to see what's up, you can follow me on all different forms of social media. The link tree will be in the bio. Any sources I have used will be in the description of this podcast. And I really hope you enjoy. Thank you so much.